In a world of accelerating change, continuous learning is the single most important long-term investment a company or an individual can make. After all, we do live in a knowledge economy. In fact, continuous learning is so fundamental, it is driving companies who embed a continuous learning culture, an experimental culture, into their organization to significantly outperform the S&P 500. We see this highlighted by Stephen H. Tomk in his book Experimentation Works. And a rapid experimentation culture can only be implemented if there is a culture of continuous learning to support it, behind it. Yet companies significantly underinvest in learning. And by that, I mean deliberate learning. Learning that happens by design, that is planned, that has clear intentions, with clear goals, and measures progress as opposed to incidental learning, which is, learning on the job, learning that happens by chance, that doesn't have clear learning goals or time dedication. So why is continuous learning so important? And what steps can you take to implement it? Well, let's find out together. Hey everybody, David here, co-founder at Growth Tribe, and I'm super pleased to share some great tips to upgrade your organization's capabilities. In this video, I'm going to explore what continuous learning actually is, why continuous learning is the highest ROI activity your organization can implement, and 4 actionable steps on the road to becoming a continuous learning organization. So let's do it. So what is continuous learning? As a Burson report pointed out, the single biggest driver of business impact is the strength of an organization's learning culture. I love this report by MIT and Deloitte. So recently they did a study of digital transformation with 4,300 executives, and they found that the most successful, fastest growing, digitally enabled companies are differentiated by one thing. They have transformed the way individuals and organizations learn new capabilities. And this means learning all the time, not just once a year. Now, amongst these highest performing companies, 73% of employees in these companies are updating their skills every 6 months, and 44% are updating them continuously. That's almost half. Okay, so what am I talking about? What is continuous learning? The continuous learning is the process, the mindset, and the culture of learning new skills, capabilities, and knowledge on a continuous basis. It's as simple as that. And this doesn't happen naturally. It requires a method and dedication. Fundamental to this is a growth mindset. It's a term that is often used and abused, but very rarely understood. The growth mindset positions the individual as a constant work in progress who enjoys challenges, strives to learn, and consistently sees potential to develop new skills. But it's not the same thing as simple openness. So we will dive into the growth mindset a little bit later with some surprising findings that you probably didn't know yet. But first, I want to talk about why continuous learning is so important. I want to kind of convince you. We believe continuous learning is the single greatest return on investment activity a company can make. And while the ROI can be sometimes difficult to measure in the short term, it comes down to the fundamental fact that people and their day-to-day decisions are the foundation of every organization. And think about this, if every single person can make decisions that are just 1 or 2% better every single day, similar to finance's concept of compound interest, the compound returns of learning might seem slim at first, but will grow exponentially over the long run. And that's what continuous learning is all about. Especially because, once again, we live in a knowledge economy. So what greater investment than knowledge? With 1 billion workers worldwide, or about 1 in 3 workers worldwide, there is a greater dependence on knowledge, on information, and information-related skills than ever before. Therefore, any investment in human knowledge, what we call human capital, will always yield higher returns over the long run. A study by Pluralsight, for example, showed a return on investment of 295% of continuous learning, with payback seen in less than 6 months. The central return was delivered in faster and better product development, due to faster talent development through upskilling and closing what's called the digital skills gap. And as shown by the figure, the returns were compounded over time, as skills lead to more skills, and knowledge leads to more knowledge, and people make better decisions, more creative decisions to deliver better products and customer experiences. This is compound interest in action. Yet, we're not investing, we're not taking it seriously. Research from Deloitte highlights that 86% of leaders view learning and development as their top challenge, while only 10% feel ready to respond to it. So Burson examined the issue of continuous learning and found that companies companies that effectively nurture their employees' desire to learn are at least 30% more likely to be market leaders in their field. That's really strong correlation, and yet only 10% of companies have been able to create this culture of learning. So why do companies fail at continuous learning? Now, one thing is that historically, companies have gotten away with, and in fact have preferred, to buy talent rather than to build talent. When HR leaders are asked about how they plan to build new skills, new capabilities for the future, almost 2/3 say they will go out and recruit for the new skills they need. Yet this only exacerbates the problem of the digital skills gap even further. In a world where new skills are in high demand and most professionals are fully employed, it is no longer cost-effective to simply buy skills, nor is it even feasible. Companies must also begin to build skills internally. They need to take the long-term view. Recruitment is a zero-sum game. If one company hires talent with in-demand skills in, say, artificial intelligence or user experience design, then another company cannot hire that same talent. What this creates is a paradox, where there is both a huge demand for skills and also a huge demand for work, which are both left unfulfilled. Then against this backdrop, even when managers understand the importance of learning, they are often more interested in boosting short-term results and performance, which is, mistakenly, seen as an enemy of learning. A report by Burson again found that among more than 700 organizations studied, the average employee had only 24 minutes a week for formal learning, and less than 1% for an activity that has such high compound returns. It's much too low. Another reason why we believe that investment is much too low is that the half-life, the shelf life of perishable skills has become razor thin. In its report titled The Enterprise Guide to Closing the Skills Gap, IBM presents research that suggests that digital skills generally have a half-life of about 1 or 2 years. Now, as perishable skills are replaced by more efficient or effective technologies and processes, and replaced more quickly, the skills gap is no longer a gap, it's becoming an abyss. Therefore, if companies are not building talent, but only buying talent, they will quickly find that their investment becomes redundant really rapidly, and they will need to go back out into the market to buy more talent. Think of building talent like a renewable energy, as renewable talent, and buying talent as non-renewable, if they're then not built up. The future, as we know, is renewable and long-term after all. So we need to shift towards investing in building talent, building capabilities. I suggest you check out this beautiful article from the Wall Street Journal, Why Companies Are Failing at Reskilling, to find out more about why companies fail to create these continuous learning cultures. So how can we fix this? Well, we'd like to share not all solutions, but 4 ways that you can create a continuous learning culture. So how can we fix this? Well, we'd like to share not all solutions, but 4 ways that you can create a continuous learning culture. First up, continuous learning requires a growth mindset. So Carol Dweck, psychology professor at Stanford, she first started studying what would become known as a growth mindset back in the 70s. And essentially, growth mindset is someone or an organization that enjoys challenges, strives to learn, and consistently sees potential to develop new skills. Now, this is opposed to a fixed mindset, where an individual sees skills and talent as something innate, something they either possess or lack. What are the signs, the lagging indicators of a company that has more of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset? I'll give you a few. First of all, a small handful of star players are highly valued in a fixed mindset organization. There's a big focus on status. In fixed mindset organizations, you also tend to see more rigid planning, more waterfall approaches, and less innovative thinking. Fixed mindset organizations are also more likely to hire from outside, to buy talent, as we called it, and emphasize an applicant's credentials and past accomplishments. Now, on the other hand, what are the signs of a company that has adopted a growth mindset? In growth mindset organizations, supervisors express significantly more positive views about their employees, more focus on potential across a wider range of employees and associates. They tend to hire more from within their own ranks and less from outside. They tend to value potential over credentials. They tend to position themselves as learn-it-alls rather than know-it-alls. They tend to demonstrate higher levels of psychological safety and cater to more risk-taking, innovative cultures with less fear of uncertainty. And that's a really important one, less fear of uncertainty. I want to give you some paths to follow, some keys to start adopting a growth mindset. Number 1, allocating budget. Allocating a significantly higher percentage of annual budgets for learning programs. How much are you really investing? And I'm talking hard, cold cash and budget budget in continuous learning. But also invest in time. Create dedicated time slots for deliberate learning. Allocate specific time slots. Second one is to shift focus to potential. Leadership should focus on the potential of each employee, updating company values to reflect a culture of innovation, collaboration, learning, and growth. So how are you ensuring that human potential, human capital, is taken as seriously as experience and credentials? Are you, for example, tracking learning as part of performance reviews? Third tip is to hire and promote from within. Look to hire and promote within your ranks instead of externally where possible. What percentage of all promotions take place internally? Have you established things like a learning passport? Have you established clear development plans and things like management training? Number 4 is to shift recruitment policy to value potential. The idea here is to shift your recruitment policy to value potential and capacity for learning, as opposed to credentials and past accomplishments. So ask yourselves, how are we currently assessing a candidate's suitability? Are our recruitment processes focused on what people come up with? Are we focusing on how their minds work, how they come up with a solution? What's the decision-making process? Number 5 is to empower employees to experiment, to fail, and to learn. So some things we've seen work is personal targets or team targets around learning and even around failure. Another one that works really well is leadership, recognizing failure and success as two sides of the same coin. Leadership should lead by example here. When is the last time leadership at any level admitted a failure in public? And how many experiments does your team, your department, your organization run on a weekly, on a monthly, or on a yearly basis? Number 6 is to democratize experiments and learning. Move away from having a few star players calling the shots and truly democratize experiments and organizational learning. So what barriers do you currently face in testing ideas? Are they related to stakeholders? Is it access to data? Is it lack of psychological safety? Are the decision-making rules too strict? Is it the structure and the org design? And when is the last time it was someone's job to track these blockers and to adapt systems to remove these blockers permanently? The second step is you should know your people's capabilities and help foster their learning. Now think about this. For us as humans, often knowing what we should learn next is a big hurdle. There's a huge paradox of choice that comes with endless courses available online and knowing which skills are most important. It's like standing at that toothpaste aisle. Which toothpaste should I buy? Employers need to collaborate with employees, benchmark these current skill sets, and strategize towards the most in-demand digital skills that'll help the individual and the organization. You can do these 4 things to help foster learning. Number 1 is to measure skills and capabilities. You can complete a capability scan to test for the skill sets that employees possess now and uncover the skills that they need, that they're lacking in, the skills gap. When was the last time you actually carried out an audit of capabilities within your organization to identify gaps and potential? So I've actually included our capability scan in the description below. It only works for marketing and for data. We're adding new stuff as we go, but if you're interested, try it out. The second step is to strategize based on that skills gap. And based on that skills gap, creating a personalized learning journey based on the individual's needs. And it can be something really simple. It's what you should learn and when. What percentage of my team members, of the rest of my organization, has a learning journey that's mapped out for them? The third one is to actually invest in learning. Invest in L&D programs for employees to enroll based on their skills gap. What does your current learning and development program look like? Does it inspire? Do your managers and your leaders take learning seriously? Do they share what they're learning, leading by example? As a leader, I believe that 10% of my job is actually L&D. Regardless of which business line or product I manage, I believe it should be 10% of my role. Learning should be engaging and fun. Easier said than done, but enjoyable learning leads to higher motivation and better outcomes. Why can't your learning programs be as engaging as Netflix is to your employees? There are thousands of new technologies and learning experiences available out there. The edtech landscape is huge and growing, yet sometimes we don't research these as diligently as we would new tools or new processes. So let's take it seriously. Now we talked about the growth mindset, we talked about analyzing capabilities. The third one is embedding continuous learning into the flow of work. While organizations realize that learning is top priority, with 92% prioritizing this issue over the next 3-5 years, only 61 feel prepared to do anything about it. What this tells us is that employers feel unsure of how to embed learning into the flow of work. Now without compromising short-term goals and productivity, of course. Now Now, learning through experience yields better results than simplistic classroom training. And there is no reason why learning cannot be part of the flow of work, in a continuous, practical, and experiential nature that builds on the employer's mission, whilst also meeting the employee's needs. So we suggest you do these 5 things to embed learning in the flow of work. Number 1, create inspiration for learning at work with resources available to workers. For example, with team channels where colleagues can share articles or learning or mental models, or invite speakers in-house, go to events out of the office, or partner with cutting-edge education companies who have frequent webinars and roundtables to share relevant learnings. This will inspire people to change their mindset, change their paradigms. How many events, channels, or speakers have you invited to inspire learning in the past month or in the past year? We also strongly recommend to focus on practical skills over theory, right? You don't learn Kung Fu by simply watching Bruce Lee movies. You need to practice. Develop a learning and development program that doesn't focus too much on theory, but instead on practical skills by applying learnings quickly into practical output at work. So I ask you, if you're investing in learning, how are you actually measuring their success and impact, both on a behavioral level, are people behaving differently, but also an organizational level? Third one, and some believe it's outdated, but it still holds pretty true, is the 70-20-10 learning model. 70% of learning should be through on-the-job learning, osmosis, challenging assessments, a lot of that usually linked to tooling. 20% of learning should be through developmental relationships, so for example, mentoring, and 10% should be through coursework and training, deliberate learning. So if we follow the 7-20-10 model, that would mean 22 days per year dedicated to deliberate, action-based, challenging, goal-oriented learning. Is that the case at the moment? Number 4 is that continuous learning requires habit forming. Creating a habit requires, as you know, a step-by-step process at regular time intervals. So make sure learning is presented in small, short, digestible formats for low effort and investment, so it becomes easier to repeat and build a habit. So how are you currently encouraging workers to build a habit of learning? Number 5 is learning should be social. Peer-to-peer learning, cohort-based learning, utilizes success partners or accountability partners with which learnings are shared, as well as progress and feedback. Humans are more sensitive to social proof and invest more time, money, and effort when it's a social activity. So have you ever asked yourself, how am I socializing learning? Finally, reward continuous learning. According to Deloitte, only 45% of organizations actively reward employees for developing skills and capabilities, and only 39% of leaders are rewarded for developing skills and capabilities of their teams. Given the importance of continuous learning to organizations, incentives should be used to motivate and reward employees to learn, to adapt, to improve at the individual level, but also at the team level. So here's 4 things that you can do to reward continuous learning. Number 1 is to create a reward structure that incorporates learning as a key objective. How are your performance reviews incentivizing learning? Are they at all? Are you even mentioning it? The second one is to find intrinsic rewards to motivate people. Habits are more likely to be successfully formed when they are linked to intrinsic motivation and human triggers. Check out the book Drive, for example. It talks a lot about this. For example, titles, badges, awards, and the autonomy to work where they like are just some examples. So how are you making sure your rewards are relevant on a personal level? The third one is to measure learning through metrics. What is the actual ROI of learning? We spend a lot of time on this. So things like the number of experiments that were run, how many hours were spent on learning, what is the behavioral change, what is the bottom line ROI, L&D programs signed up, what is the level of improvement on a key skills competency, or digital learning metrics. How are you currently measuring the impact of your learning? Are you looking at operational metrics, number of people who participated, completion rates? Are you looking at behavioral metrics, behavioral change? And are you also looking at KPIs or organizational metrics? And then the last one brings it all together. Number 4 is to use these metrics as a basis for reward or promotion. So the idea is to use what we measure to keep driving learning current. So are you even measuring that data and using it to drive behavior and to drive learning continuously? So there you have it. Of course, we could talk about this much more and go into the details, but we wanted to give you 4 avenues of how to adopt a continuous learning culture in your organization. And in a rapidly changing world where technology is reshaping the world, and those organizations that actively adopt continuous learning, that take it seriously, that put it into their culture, they will grow faster. These companies will be more competitive, more resilient, more anti-fragile, and ultimately future-proof. They will actually grow from change rather than suffer from it. Now, you can read our article on continuous learning, you can take a capability scan, and you can also check out the resources mentioned by following the links in the description. And of course, as always, if you like what we do, please smash that like button, support us by subscribing, hit the bell, and we'll be speaking really, really soon.